Hello and welcome back to Inspire with myself, Nicola Wills. Today's guest is a home education and gentle parenting mentor with 3 children. Previously working in a pupil referral unit in behaviour management, she now equips and empowers over 250,000 parents to make better choices for their families via her TikTok account and blog, Hannah Home Educates. Please welcome Hannah Canavan.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Hi, Hannah. So I just want to share with everyone how I came about you, basically. Just scrolling, as we do on TikTok, and, you know, millions of videos out there. And I just happened to come across yours. I wasn't searching for anything. And you just grabbed my attention. The way you spoke, how you were, sharing. You just go into such depth about, first, for me, what was really interesting to me was the gentle parenting. This is something that I didn't even know there was a thing. I just knew in my heart that I couldn't be, I didn't even know, like an angry parent or you must do this, do this. I always wanted to talk and access, and I guess I now know that that's gentle parenting. And so then when I listened to your video, it's like, oh my gosh, you're just talking to me. This is a thing. And it was probably about 9 months ago that I first come across your account. And now I am obsessed. And for me, I don't home educate my children, but from listening to you, it is something now that myself and my husband openly speak about, because it's, like you say, Hannah Home Educates. You educate people in, educating your children at home. So
very much.
Incredible. But Hannah, obviously the accolades are amazing, and I know this is really at the beginning part of your journey, but let's take it right back to where it all began.
Sure. Thank you. That was very kind as well. Thank you. I'm intrigued to know what videos you saw, because obviously there are thousands of them. So I grew up in Croydon, so South London, in a quiet, nice area, and to a nurse and a policeman, and had a kind of normalish childhood. I went to a local comprehensive primary. I was very lucky to get into a good one. And then secondary was grammar school. So it was a girls' grammar.
Oh, wow.
Which was very good, but it was, in the top 5% of the country, very pressurised and academic. And I did find that quite difficult in terms of, already putting pressure on myself and being a perfectionist, and then having the external pressure as well. So I think I was 11 when I started developing an eating disorder, and
oh wow!
And so my teen years were pretty difficult. I do think that has helped. Having those difficulties have helped now in a lot of ways, but it was obviously very difficult.
But 11, 11 is really young.
Yes, I think it was year 8 when I first decided, I don't want to eat anymore. It was, it was almost a way of feeling less, because I felt so stressed with the work and the competition and living up to. I don't even think my parents really put pressure on me. It was myself, and this is something I've always done, put a lot of pressure on myself. So
you said that you're a perfectionist. Is that something that that you have always been?
I don't think I identified that about myself until very recently, because I think, when you're a parent and you're trying to do best by your kids, and you're trying to help them, and you want them to feel certain ways about themselves, you often then identify things in yourself, this is really interesting, I wouldn't want them to feel like that, and just the amount of pressure. And I think recently, having done fairly well in work, identifying that it was never quite enough, and I never felt like I'd done a good job. It was then.
So just with the eating disorder at 11, it was not about looking in the mirror and thinking you're fat.
No, not initially. I think that's probably quite a big misconception about general eating disorders. It's that it's a desire to be thin, and I think there certainly was that later on. But at the beginning, it was really a way of getting some control and feeling like I was good at something. It'd be like, how long can I go without food? And can I still function like that? And it also, when you're not eating, your emotions shut off. And so it was easy to cope with life when you don't really feel things. So that was difficult. And it's a shame, because, I had potential and I had the education that I wanted, or that, that I could have wanted. And I do feel like in some ways it was a bit wasted because I was just struggling so much.
Yeah,
so that's,
of course,
a bit of a shame.
And did your parents know at the time?
I think it took 3 years for them to realise. Yeah, I developed bulimia and when I was 11 as well. And I think I was 14 when we first had a conversation about it. I think there's so much more education around it now. And also, I think there were so many disordered behaviours that were normalised in previous generations. You know, you have the mum's eating almond and that's completely normal. And I think, you know, my mum grew up in that generation. And so it took a while to realise actually this is a real problem, by which time, unfortunately, I was well into it and it was a bit late.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was unfortunate. Yeah,
I mean, because I never have had an eating disorder, but my sister has, and but that kind of started when she was 16, and I remember thinking, God, that's young. But talking about an education of us, like I remember calling a helpline saying my sister's going to die. What should I do? And they were like, just support her. And I was like, how can I support her? You know, and I remember going back to, because I was living in London at the time, and I went back to my mum's house where my sister was, you know, and having no clue. And I would just be like, eat the chicken breast, just eat it. And then she'd throw it in my, I mean, we literally had like a fight because I'm just desperate for her to be well. Yeah. And she's desperate to, it was an awful time. And
it is, absolutely. And I think for loved ones, it must be even worse. I was semi in control of it, you know. My mum just had to watch me, and I can't imagine doing that with my children. I just can't know the absolute agony that would have been for her. So those years were certainly very, very difficult.
Yeah. And I feel like now with social media, you know, there's such a bashing about it, but actually with social media and like the information is there. I could have, you know, now, you know, I was like late, you know, a teenager at the time when this happened, but now I could just Google how to best to support my anorexic sister, and the information would be there. Because you know, you're listening to this and you're going through that. It's all I remember being. It's all I thought about. Yeah. How can I help her? How can I help her? And the more I tried to help, the more she pushed me away.
Yeah, and I do think it's true that you have to be willing to accept help. So if someone is a loved one of someone going through that, there is actually nothing you can do until that person.
I know.
And that is a very, very difficult situation to be in.
Yeah.
It's still, to this day, it's the hardest thing that I've done is recover from that. Even
really
having 3 children and single parenting, that is by far the hardest thing.
Yeah. And so how long did that last for, Hannah?
Oh, wow. I would say 17 years, something like that. I'd say years. Right. But until even when I was pregnant with Esme, I remember it still being an issue. It was sort of when I met my husband, the girl's dad, I was 19, and I do feel like things got very much better than they were, but it was still not good. So meeting him was great, and that really helped. But I still did struggle a lot over the years until, I think probably last 5 years, I would say.
Yeah, you're in a...
Yeah. So it takes a long time, especially if you're sort of recovering by yourself without professional help and things. It's a long journey.
Yeah. Can I just ask a question? Because it's something that's just come that I keep thinking about. Fasting. So fasting is, I'm sure, and I have done it healthy and it does all these things, but it feels like it's kind of repackaging anorexia and a little bit. Like, don't eat all day and then you've got a tiny little window to eat and then that's it. And I'm sure that's what my sister used to do.
Albert, I think there's several... I was vegan for 2 years, and I do look back and think how much of that was me repackaging control around food, all that stuff. And I think it's a lot about the intention and what you want to get out of it. There are some times when your body just doesn't feel like having some food, and maybe you overindulge, and it just is that time. But I think you do have to be very honest with yourself about why you're doing things and how long you're, are you going to do this forever? Is this your whole life now, or is this just for a time? And constantly be like, am I being honest with myself about how healthy is this, and how much am I using it to cover up a feeling that I don't want to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Thank you for that, open and honesty. And so then you went through your teenage years, for a long time, suffering basically. And did you, obviously, because now you home educate your children, was there a point when you were in school that you thought, one day when I have children, I will never put them in school? Did you have that feeling at a young age?
No, I didn't. I didn't think that at all. I always wanted to be a mum. And I remember when I was probably about year 9, one of my English teachers said to my friend, actually, she said, I just think Hannah wants to be a mum. That's what she wants to do. That was always what I wanted.
Yeah.
I never thought I wouldn't send them to school. That came later on.
Yeah.
I always thought, naturally, I think I would have always been like a gentle parent. I don't think I would have ever, used conventional discipline methods, for example. But yeah, that came later on when I worked in a pupil referral unit and saw alternative methods of education and communication with children. That very much came when I started there when I was 19.
Okay. So you leave school, you go, and was that your a choice to go there, or was it a bit like, I don't know really what to do with my life? Did you have a desire to go to have a career in that field?
I think it was interesting to me, and it was different because it was a pupil referral unit. It wasn't a normal school, and I've always been interested in behaviour. I think at the time, we were teenagers, and I just wanted another job. It was just another job. We'd been travelling. It seemed convenient, and then I just happened to absolutely love it.
And so when you say pupil referral unit, for people that don't know what that is, what is that?
So if a child is, I think they call it excluded now from school, but if a child, we used to call it expelled. So the school says we can't help you and you are causing too much disruption, so you can't come anymore. A child can be sent to a pupil referral unit, which is often a smaller provision with specialist teachers and can provide extra support for children who really aren't coping in mainstream. Where I worked was pretty special because there was a pupil referral unit, which looked like a school, still classrooms and uniforms. But then if you got expelled from there, there was another place, and that's where I worked. And so it was completely different. It looked more like a youth club. And, they could wear their own clothes and they were given independence, and it was very different to school.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. And so what kind of, you're 19, so you're basically a baby yourself.
Yeah.
These children and people that are literally a few years younger than you. What type of people did you meet working there?
Well, that was one of the best things about it. It was very eclectic. And I think it was a lot about just how you could connect in different ways with the teenagers. So they were 14. They were only 5 years younger than me. 5 or 6 years. And I think I got on well there because I wasn't threatening, because I was smaller than most of them. And I was, blonde, and, I wasn't going to threaten them or overpower them or anything. So they sort of accepted me. And it was there was a much older man working there. There was a guy who'd been at an alternative provision before. There were 2 women who ran it who were absolutely incredible. And so the actual group of people who ran it were very different on paper, but they all understood the children and what they needed. It was not normal school. Yeah.
And the children that would come in there, would you, because I always feel like, what is normal, right? So my brother was severely disabled, and he passed away last year. But I remember growing up thinking, why, I'm normal and he's not, but who's to say that?
Yeah.
Who is to say? So, sometimes children are getting excluded from school because they're doing something, but that's just who they are as their person. They just don't fit and conform into what society says is normal.
Absolutely.
And so with these children that were coming into, what types, did they have home issues, or was it more of something actually wrong with them? What were they like?
Pretty much all of them had really bad home lives and were involved with it. And so from my perspective, their behaviour was very understandable. They were very angry.
Of course.
And they didn't see the point in doing school when, they used to bring their 5-year-old sibling in because their parent was passed out on the floor at home. And so,
oh my God,
talking to them about GCSEs was almost completely pointless because they didn't see that as an accessible option for them. At the same time, they were smart and they were lovely children. if you didn't see their behaviour as personal, I think that's quite a key thing. And I remember I then ended up as a one-on-one with a boy who was, I think he was 15, and they had sent him to this mechanics college. So I used to have to go and babysit him basically.
Yeah.
And he would ping off the walls and he would mess around, but he loved cooking and he wanted to be a chef. But they didn't put him in that program because of his behaviour. But you know, he'd often sort of escape from where he was supposed to be doing mechanics, and I'd have to follow him. And one time he went back home and he made this incredible stew. It was called groundnut stew. And he was so talented, and he made this incredible food. And I thought, you don't need to be in a workshop. You need to be in the kitchen. So they all had a lot of potential. It was just that what was being offered to them was not going to help them.
Yeah, completely. And you say that you learned gentle parenting.
Yeah.
For anyone that's listening that doesn't know what that is, could you describe that to us?
The best, I think there are probably a few definitions, but the way I try and describe it is that we speak to children with the same respect that we would speak to adults. And so, you know, I would never say to a friend, you know, get in the car right now or I'm going to, you know, I wouldn't say that to them because that would be really rude, and we don't threaten other adults. And so you try to think carefully about, you know, is how you're talking to a child respectful? Usually, you know, punishment's not used because, again, we wouldn't punish our partner, for example. And yeah, it's just about more being in partnership with a child than a top-down hierarchy.
Yeah, which I completely understand and respect. What do you do when, for example, my 4-year-old is jumping on the sofa and we're renting a house and I've told her a million times not to jump on the sofa because she's going to ruin it? How, in a situation like that where you're like, get down, Margot, otherwise you're going to not go to soft play.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be a gentle parent, but I also wanted to get off that sofa.
Yeah,
How would I communicate better in that situation?
So I think one thing that people say, they often say, I've said it a million times. And I think, well, if you've had to say it a million times, you know, we do want to say something else because it's not hitting where it needs to hit. And I think being playful can often work really well. And so, for example, if she's jumping on the sofa, she obviously wants to move, and you know, so is there somewhere else she could jump into mummy's arms and we'll go and do this? And so you redirect. And it's not about, because also kids are an absolute genius when it comes to getting attention, and this is seen as a bad thing, but it's literally what they're hardwired to do to survive. They need parental attention. So maybe she's doing it because she knows she's going to get a reaction from you. So rather than talking about it, jump into mummy's arms and we're going to go in another room in the kitchen
and jump on the bed or something. Yeah,
or you know, or throw something or some other thing that's going to get that energy out. But rather than, you know, focusing on that behavior, just almost ignore it and just redirect that energy. I think something that also we could do is natural consequences. So 4 is a little bit young for this, but if it's a 10-year-old, you could be like, you know, if that sofa breaks, this is how much money it's going to cost, and are you going to contribute to that? You know, mummy's going to have to work this many hours to pay for that away from you. It might mean we don't get to live, you know, all of that stuff comes when they're older, because a 4-year-old won't process.
But it's just so simple, and it is, isn't it? And it just makes so much sense. Like, it's almost like putting yourself in their shoes, isn't it? Rather than being like above them. Like, what would I need if I was 4?
Yeah.
I would need my mum to be fun with me, to just change the environment.
And sometimes you can't be, and sometimes you do need to get on with things. And it's, you know, you can say, I really need you to get off there. And you know, ultimately, if you tried the playful thing and you've tried everything else, you know, I'm going to need to lift you off that because we really, you know, don't want to pay for the sofa. And just, you know, gently lift down. If she's having a tantrum, that's okay. They've got big feelings, but then it's about, you don't shame them and you don't say, well, you're being ridiculous and this and that, because they have had a need or a desire to do that. And, you know, sometimes we want to do ridiculous things, and as adults, we can do that without someone yelling at us. And also assuming positive intent. So assume that they are not trying to piss you off.
Yeah.
I think.
Which they never are. They never are. We just see it as that.
Yeah. Especially repeatedly, then it's like, you must be trying to piss me off. But actually, they're just repeatedly trying to do something, maybe even get your attention. And even negative is better for a child sometimes than no attention. So, yeah.
And, you know, it's just so right, because my husband and I, we do have this argument. He'll never listen to this, so it's fine. Not that he's a bad person. He's an amazing dad.
Yeah.
But he'll be like, she's just doing it to wind me up. And I'm like, you're a 41-year-old grown man. Yeah. She's 4. Honey, trust me, she's not doing it intentionally. She's doing it because she just wants to have a bit of fun, or because she wants you to play with her. It's not winding me up and he goes in the other room all angry.
Yeah. It's funny because it does. Also, I remember my eldest is now 12 and a half, but I remember when she was 5 and I had a 3-year-old and a baby, and we went on holiday and she didn't want to eat any vegetables. We were at this.
I know this.
Yeah. I just remember thinking, this is ridiculous. You are 5 years old. You know better than this. And you are just being awkward. And now I look at 5-year-olds and I think, you're a baby, you know? Yeah. So it's just, but when we know them so intimately as parents, it can be like, you know, we expect more from them than they can probably do.
Yeah. Or we say, you're a big girl now, which has definitely come up like, well, no, you're not actually.
No.
So this is a question, and I'm sure every single parent on the planet has this question. You've got a healthy meal in front of them and they need to eat their vegetables because it's the healthiest thing to do. And they're like, no, I'm not hungry. I don't want to do it. What do you do?
Okay. I think zooming out from that moment is always helpful, because ultimately, is eating one meal with vegetables the end goal? I think maybe the end goal is that we end up with a child who's got like a positive attitude towards food and is generally healthy, and and also makes those choices for themselves. We don't, you know, we can't be with them when they're 25. And my brother actually never ate fruit or vegetables, and then he went backpacking in America when he was about 20, and started eating wild blueberries that he found. And my mum and I were like, you don't eat fruit. And he just suddenly started. And I think we can often freak ourselves out, because if they don't do it in front of us when you know, at a certain age, we think it's never going to happen. And I remember thinking this about potty training, reading, several other things, thinking it's never going to happen. And generally, when you think that as a parent, it's not true. It's just that. So in that moment, I'd probably think, hang on, am I modelling that behaviour? Am I eating while in front of them? Is there an alternative? Is it that they don't like broccoli and they can have carrot sticks instead? Over a week or a month, are they getting a balanced diet? And so maybe in that mealtime, eating those vegetables is not the end goal. I would probably be more relaxed about it than they have to eat the vegetables at the meal. You know, I have found that putting it's a bit of a, I'm not sure how, I think it's ethical. When they're watching TV, whatever I put next to them, they will eat, because they're distracted. And so if you really want your child to eat carrots and apple, shove it next to them on a plate when they won't bother getting up and going to find crisps. Generally, what I found, just mindlessly eat their fruit and vegetables. So there's, you know, or take it outside is another one, just to mix up the meal time and
love that. And on finishing your plate, so my husband and I have this I think as well, because his like mum was like growing 2 sons who they literally polished off every single meal, like they couldn't get enough. Whereas myself and my girls, like, we are like little picky eaters. We don't want to eat it all. And he's like, this spit, you got to eat it all. You got to eat it all. And I'm like, no. And almost that we have an argument every dinner time because they're not finishing all of their meal. Now, I believe I'm right. What do you think? I'm like, but they've had enough. That's their full. Then it should make them eat food.
I think you're right too, to be honest. I mean, what I would say is, you know, if we had a dinner party and we invited adult guests over, and there were let's say there's 8 of us, would you ever say that to another person? You know? And I think it is different because we're responsible for our children. But I'm wondering, often our attitude towards mealtimes is very much linked to how we experience mealtimes. And so I know I have friends who grew up very, very, very poor, and their thing was they had to eat all their food. And so they've got a bit of, you know, that something around that because they did, and so they've brought that with them. I think you know, how can you possibly know for another person how hungry they are or how full they are?
I know.
So if it was a case where every single mealtime they were refusing to eat anything, and then a minute later they wanted a bunch of sugar, I could understand.
Yeah.
I just think finishing, because what if one day he decides he's going to pile up the plate? Are they still supposed to finish it? How does this?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I would. We could have fun meal times together. It'd be fun.
Yeah. And also, I just feel like as a girl, like I don't have that big appetite. Sure. I'm not like, and my two little girls, they're like, we're all the same. I'm happily just kind of pick a little bit and not have this. Yeah. So, but trying to explain that to a man who's like, can't, he eats his food and then he's going to have a bowl of cereal afterwards.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel like the mum-dad relationship in all families, we're coming from also different parents, but also we're coming from different experiences as children. He wanted to be outside like with bugs, and my girls want to be indoors playing with dolls. He's like, why are they indoors? They want to be. It's like different. I'm making him see he is an amazing person, but it's just the different conversations that that we have around raising our children.
And it can be a real challenge because ultimately our children are, for a lot of us, the most important thing we will ever engage in terms of parenting and or in terms of any sort of project, if you like. Raising our children is the most important thing, and so we want to get it right. I just think, especially when it's partners, it can be very difficult to find where the middle ground is. So I think that'll always be a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like what and I have done this, and he's not particularly strict, but he's a lot stricter than I am.
Oh.
I would then find like your video or something, and I would like send it to him. Have a watch of this. Like in concepts that I feel it. That I, or as women, we're open to. If someone said, there's actually a better way of parenting, I would, oh my God, let me know. I really want to learn about it. Whereas, I'm not saying men, but some people are like, no, I'm right. And I just think with evolution, and we can see that the way that I was raised is not particularly, it took me 10 years to unlearn all the things that unfortunately my parents, so I want to do things differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there might be something in there about men, how men were raised is that you don't really express your emotions. And so I think that often men can find that very difficult seeing that in children, and they automatically go to just do what you're told because they had to, and they had to, bottle it all up. And this is now how it's playing out. But I think if you've got a partner who's willing to watch things or read things, that is a real pro.
Yeah.
As much as it can be frustrating as a partner who is doing the research and doing all that, it can be different if you've got a typical setup where maybe the man's working more or something. I think it can be probably quite scary to see that things are being done differently, and they're almost scared, like, oh, how is my child going to turn out? Are they going to be okay? And so having that compassion of saying to them, I know that you partly they need to trust you on it. But I don't want to just overrule you. I do understand where you're coming from, but can we look at some?
Yeah, have a look at this, have a read of this. Yeah, absolutely. And so you're in your 20s working at this, what sounds amazing place. You're with your partner.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
So I was there for, I think it was less than 2 years, because I had Esme when I was 21 and I was still working there when I was pregnant. So we got married very young when I was 21, and then Esme came along, and then I had my baby, and then I sort of made parenting was everything to me. It was as soon as it came along, I loved being her mum, and it felt very natural. I felt very lucky that I didn't struggle in a lot of ways that a lot of parents do, partly because I didn't have much of a life to give up. I think I've had friends with babies in their 40s. They've had this amazing career, they've had holidays, they've got a house and cars, and suddenly this baby comes along and blows it all up, and they can't do that. I didn't have any of that, so I didn't have that to miss. And and so it was a bit of a whirlwind. None of my friends had babies because I was young.
Of course, yeah.
So she came along. Ira was 2 years later, and Elfie was 2 years after that. So I think it was 3 under 4 by the
Amazing.
time 5. Yeah.
By the time you're 25?
Yeah.
Wow. But you've always wanted, that was your goal, that was your dream. And so, it wasn't like, oh gosh, that's such a hard thing. It was like, brilliant, you've got what you want. Conversations with your husband then, did you always know, one, you wanted to homeschool, and two, the type of parenting style? Like, how did you have that conversation with him?
I think that home education was different because that was more of not exactly a one-off conversation, but it was one decision that had to be made at some point, when we talked about it from when she was a baby. And so we decided that we'd look around, I think we just looked around one small school near us, but just to give it a go, see how it made us minds, because it's a really good school. And we did it, and then we just didn't apply for a place for her. And he was always very happy for, I would be doing the home education, he'd be working. Yeah. I've always managed to work online in some capacity. So that was just a decision we made, and I feel very lucky. It was easy, I didn't have it pushed back. It was like, we'll see how it goes. Gentle parenting, I think we sort of navigated it along the way. I was always very much the one who was obsessive about it and read everything, and but he's naturally not a shouty person or anything like that.
Nice.
That made it a lot easier, because that would be something I would have found difficult.
Yeah.
So I feel like we were pretty on the same page, which is awesome.
Yeah, amazing. And so why did you decide, again, like so many people, and I definitely, I'm one of these person, sending my children off to school felt a little bit like a relief, because I'd get some time for myself.
Definitely.
And so how, you obviously decided at such a young age, did they go to any nursery, or did you have any childcare, or nothing? It's always been
we didn't do nursery or preschool. I think so. My mum used to come up and have them like for most of a day, once a week when they were a little bit older, so that I could do a day's work. But they've never been to nursery or preschool. I think there were a few reasons. One, and I think you could divide them into sort of push reasons towards home education and pull away from the mainstream environment. So obviously the experience I'd had at the pupil referral unit was very positive, and I thought I loved this approach. It was gentle and respectful and everything I wanted for my child. So that had made a big impact. I think also the idea of they use punishment in schools, in most schools in the UK. And I thought, I'm raising her in this way, and I don't like that it's not like that in mainstream. I had a sort of a gut feeling there was something about it, which now is, turns out she's autistic. And so there was something in there that made me think, I don't think she's going to, the environment didn't feel right for her. She didn't like big, bright, noisy environments. And so that was something in there. But also my ex-husband, he worked shifts, and if she'd gone to nursery and school, they'd have barely seen each other. So it's very much from a perspective of, we want this family dynamic, and we wanted to travel as well. So that was a big factor.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And then you've got all three at home at you're young, but also they're at such a young age. What did the daily structure look like?
It's such a blur now thinking back, because so much older. We've always had more of a weekly rhythm than a daily. So it would look like, on what we were very lucky in that I did decide when Esme was a baby, or we decided. And so I had time to find home educating friends and community. So we would, one day we go to a National Trust property, or a soft play, or a park, and we'd have lots of play dates, and we'd do baking and things at home. So it was very, just the stuff you do with them when they're small.
Because I would do that like in the summer holidays, anyway. Yeah.
So it was literally like that all the time. And we'd go to, the rhyme time and all that horrendous stuff you have to do when they're tiny. I really hated that. So we just did all that. And then things became more available. Then there were some groups that they started going to. Esme started Spanish and ballet and a little bit more structure.
Yeah.
So, but then when they were 6, 5 and 2, that's when we went traveling. So we didn't have a whole lot of time before then.
Yeah.
And then we were in Asia, so.
Yeah. And the thing for me is, again, I'm like, I would love the idea of homeschooling, but I think I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't homeschool them because I don't even know, you know, I can obviously do basic maths, but like if I had to teach what I got taught at school, I wouldn't know what to do. How do you know?
So I don't know.
Okay.
I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions is that you have to teach them the national curriculum and you have to act like a teacher.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's not like that at all. It you know, some people will do it like that, and that might work great for them. I don't do it like that at all. And I think there's two probably main things to say about it. And the first is you don't have to do the national curriculum.
Okay.
And so we haven't done that. As they move towards, you know, if they want to do exams, then we'll start doing more of that material. But a lot of it's in everyday life anyway. And so they do pick up that stuff. And then the other thing is you Google it. You learn yourself, not just through Google, obviously, you know, resources. And, you know, the workbooks that we've got, for example, some of them, not that we use them a whole lot, but they explain it in a very child-friendly way, which to me is great because
I know.
Right? And you only ever have to be one step ahead of your child to help them with it.
Yeah.
So it is a combination of those things. And I've got a lot of friends who are ex-teachers who now home educate.
Okay.
And they say, you know, we didn't know that at school, we Googling stuff before lessons, and it's not like they've got it all in their head.
Yeah.
It's a constant learning process for them. So it's kind of a mix of those aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like, for example, my girls are like 4 and 5. They're obsessed with like the Titanic. They want to know about Tutankhamun and the mummies. So like actually learning about that stuff and I love, but it would be like, how would I teach them to write? Okay. Did you do that yourself?
No, I didn't teach mine to read or write, and they can also do all of that. Yeah.
Really?
Honestly, I really think that there's something that I really think is fascinating is that, you know, babies walk and talk generally. You know, they do that because they're around people and they pick it up. And we do help them with it, and we might, you know, help them with their pronunciation.
Encourage it,
hands, and then we hold things away from them. It's the same process with reading. It's been fascinating. And so I read to them. I have a picture of Esme as a newborn, and I was reading Harry Potter to her because I did not want to read boring baby books. I was 21 and I wanted to read Harry Potter. She had no idea she was a baby. And I've always read to them. There's always been books around, but reading is so integral to life. You know, there's, everywhere we go, you have to interpret things. And I do think it's quite like walking and talking. And I remember hearing this really great quote, which was that if we gave every baby walking and talking lessons, you know, let's say they were 6 months old, within 100 years, we would think that babies had to have walking and talking lessons to do it, but that they just sort of do it. And for a lot of children, I think it's just a natural process, but we don't get to see that because we're doing it earlier in school.
Yeah.
And so children they don't have that time to do that later
Figure it out,
Understand.
What age would you say that they naturally would do that?
There's an age often sort of bandied around, which is 7 to 9-ish, and that's certainly been true for all of mine. Yeah. I think the one thing is obviously discomfort as a parent of being in a society where if your child can't read by 6 or their writing is this big, that's looked as a judgment on you as a parent. That's a huge part of any of this thing, you know, parenting, home education or gentle parenting, is managing your own discomfort when people judge you for that. And being able to hold that and think, no, I'm trying to do what's best for my child with the information I've got, so they can deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so age 6, Esme and the rest of your family moved to Asia.
Yes, we did. And
what was that, for work or just because you wanted to travel?
No, we'd always wanted to travel. So their dad and I had gone for 3 months backpacking when we were, you know, first in love, teenagers, and it was wonderful. And I remember thinking, I don't want, you know, people said, oh, when you have kids, that will stop. And that's the fastest way to me to make me do something. If someone could tell me I can't do it, so I immediately was like, no. And so we decided we just take this year out. We take a year and we'd maybe find somewhere else to live. And so my mum came with us, which was amazing. She took a sabbatical from work.
Wow.
So it was, hopefully we figured out a system. It was like 1 child to 1 adult when we were, you know, in airports and things. And we went to Bali and Thailand and Sri Lanka, and it was very stressful. but it was also amazing. And at the time I was doing a bit of YouTube, and I kind of regret not sharing the more stressful elements, because it was during that YouTube time when everything was very
perfect.
Perfect. And now, you know, on TikTok and things, you can share the messy bits. And there were some extremely, you know, it actually wasn't even about the parenting. It was just visas and different cultures and living arrangements and money. Actually, you know, it was and trying to find Wi-Fi within Bali is challenging often to work. So yeah, it was a very interesting year. I'm really glad we did it.
And then you came back. You didn't decide to stay there, no, to move abroad.
So we did actually want to live in Bali. What happened was that my middle daughter, unfortunately, had a horrible. She had a brain injury, so she had this accident. Yeah.
Oh, in Bali.
In Bali. So we were at a really nice resort. My mum had done yoga teacher training, so she was graduating, and it was a party. And Ira, there had been this hole in the ground that was about 20 from where she was down to the floor was about 20 foot, and it had been covered up with this plastic basically, and she went through it. So yeah, it was very, very bad, and she had, I think it was 2 brain hemorrhages. She fractured the base of her skull, which apparently is the hardest bone to break. It was horrendous.
Oh wow!
And then we experienced the healthcare over there, which understandably is not, you know, even being extremely lucky to have health insurance and things. Even then, it wasn't what you'd want for your child, and then there were earthquakes. The day she came out of hospital, Bali had its biggest earthquake for 75 years. Oh my God. And we couldn't fly her because of her injury. Okay. There were boats. It was a nightmare.
Yeah. So, and how old was Ira at this time?
She was 5.
Wow. And has that brain injury affected her?
I mean, it's hard to say, because I don't know what it's been like before, but I don't think so. She, in terms of health, she's perfect. She was so lucky.
That's incredible.
Honestly, I don't know how she's turned out how she is. She's smart and funny and brilliant, and so that is just a miracle. You know, I've got no idea how she's okay, but she's got her last appointment coming up soon, and then she ended up with a heart infection. Well, it was a blood infection that went through her heart. It was strep B and some issues with an enlarged heart, but she's having her last appointment soon, and she should be discharged then. So that'll be 5 years on.
Yeah, so she's 10 now, yeah. Oh my God, that's, horrific. And even living in Spain, obviously Spain is not a country, a developing country, but it's just different. And especially when you don't speak the language, you know, life here is actually amazing when everything is amazing. But if you're having a hard time, you're sick, you know, you're feeling a bit low, it can feel really lonely. And, you know, in my 2 and a bit years of being here, we've definitely had those moments of like, oh God, I just want my mum to pop round to just look after the children. Or when we all had COVID and it was like, we can't leave. It was just, you know, or Ben and I have an argument and I'm like, where can I go? Because I just want to go to my mum's house. Yeah. So I can just moan and bitch and then go home an hour later. Yeah. You can feel like that. And so, you know, people do romanticize living abroad, but it obviously has its perks, but it does have things that I would never even think of that unless you did that experience. And obviously you traveling and having that healthcare experience, it just goes, is it worth it? Yeah. And then obviously for that experience, it's just too much at risk.
You know, and for all the Bali, we fell in love with Bali. The people are gorgeous. It's a stunning island. The food's amazing. There's so much about it that's wonderful. It was the combination of the earthquakes and the healthcare, and I thought I can't go back. Yeah. Knowingly taking, I didn't know before that was the situation. Really,
of course,
earthquakes, but there weren't any big ones at the time. But I couldn't knowingly then take them back to live there. Yeah, know what I know, and I do feel like it was very statistically very improbable of our situation, because most people, if they need good healthcare, they you know, as very privileged white people, they fly to Singapore and they can get there. But because and that's easy for everyone, but because of her injury, the nature of her injury, she couldn't. And it just made me think, well, this is a potential, and that's not something I'm going to put them
risk.
Back.
Yeah, totally respect that. So you came back after your travels, and then did you settle into life here going, right, okay, now it's basically homeschool life forever?
Yeah, we will. I mean, I don't think we'd ever considered putting them back or putting them
into school. Yeah.
You know, it becomes just how you live. It doesn't even have education and life. It's just, the kids just don't go to school in the same way that I don't work in an office. So it's just like that. So yeah, we settled back and we're very grateful for everything in the UK, actually.
Yeah, I bet.
Very much.
Yeah. And so a question I know that you're going to get asked is, how do your children make friends and be social if they're just at home with you?
Yeah. So I think the other, and this is probably the question I've got asked most over the, you know, if I always say if I had £1 for it, then I think there's this conception from probably American media that homeschoolers stay at home a lot, and it's in the name, you know, which is why I sort of prefer home education, because but we're not at home all the time. I think 5 out of 7 days my kids have activities outside the house, and so we're always out and about. And there's a few different ways. So essentially we met a lot of people through Facebook in the early days and formed this community, and then we would just go out, and obviously we have each other on WhatsApp and that. Play dates, we have friends, you know, some of my friends have kids who go to school, and so we just have play dates with them when they're not at school. They went to Cubs and Scouts, they went to, you know, they've done Spanish and ballet. They now go to a home education group twice a week, and they're about to start the one. So 3 times a week they'll be spending most of the day in a group with other home educated children.
Okay, great. And then do they, in my head, they meet up, and then do they have a kind of classroom situation or no?
So it depends. So from what I always say is, people ask about my children's home ed group because it's very great. It's great. It's amazing.
Okay.
Problem is, my friend runs it, and she only runs one, as in she's the only person in the UK.
Yeah.
Our group. And a lot of people want to replicate that, but I'm sure there are groups up and down the country that are, you know, parent led or teacher. So my children go to one day a week. They do have structured lessons. They have math, English, science, art. It's very gentle though. It's very neurodiverse friendly, and it's, you know, very chilled in a cabin. It's very nice. Another day they go to one in a hall, and it's more free play, and it's all STEM based. So, you know, Lego and they do cooking as well there. And then another day, hopefully they're starting at a forest school type thing. So it's a variety, but there are some structured classes, and they choose to do them. My youngest does an online dance class, my eldest does an online singing class, and my middle one has just asked me to sign her up to a Greek mythology class as well.
Wow.
So they do choose to do structured. Yeah. They don't have any issues with it.
Yeah. That's just fascinating.
Busy?
I'm really busy. And then, you know, the relief that I get that my children are at school, where do you get that from?
Sure. Well, they're not 4 and 5.
Yeah.
So that's hard. And I always, you know, I just went to a home ed camp recently, and one mum at one point, she had a 5, a 3 and a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old and a baby. And at one point, I didn't even know her. She came and sat down next to us, and she just burst into tears.
Yeah.
And it's so brutal when you have young children. And so when people say, I put my kids in school for the break, I'm like, great. Like, you need that. And I completely get it. And a lot of people need that. And I would never say that's bad. I think it's great, and everyone gets a break. I think because they've never been to school, we're very used to it. So it's just dynamic that everyone's had 12 years to settle into.
Yeah.
We're not having teething issues. A lot of parents say to me, I couldn't home educate because I couldn't have my child at home with me that much. But they're talking about a child who's very stressed because of school. And I think stressed children are always much more difficult to live with.
Yeah.
You know, you've got all that tension and things. And a lot of the time people say, oh, it's like a different child. Once they've deregistered, they've calmed down. And so, you know, I think if you've got a child who is very chilled out and happy, you need, it's not that you don't ever want a break. It's just that you don't need it much, you know, because it's...
Yeah, you're so right.
But I do get breaks. My mum tries to come down. She doesn't live near me, but she tries to come down every couple of weeks and have the girls. So that's a lovely break. When they're at groups, I can do my work. And like tonight, I'm very, very lucky. I've got a teenager who, I don't have a teenager, but I know teenager from when I used to run a youth club, who's lovely, and she's back from uni, so she's going to come and babysit, and we can go out for dinner. So we're very lucky that there are enough. It's not just
on you, yeah,
it's not consistent or regular, but it's enough that I don't feel like I'm going crazy.
Yeah, which I completely respect. Yeah, and I think probably I feel like that a little bit more because I'm living abroad.
Definitely,
actually,
community.
Yeah. Not. I mean, we do from the children's school, and I've met friends, but it's not like your friends that you've known forever or your mum, or it's just different. It is different. So, I completely can see from my perspective actually why I would feel like, and so they are. How old are they now? 12,
10, and 8.
12, 10, and 8. And are they at an age where they're like, when I grow up, I want to be...
Kind of. They do. It changes. So I think my 12-year-old, her main thing is she wants to live in a van with a dog, which is cool. It will suit her down to the ground. And she's very arty, so I can imagine her doing that and, selling paintings on Etsy or something like that. She'd suit that. She says she wants to be a singer. I don't know in what context that would be, but so we haven't got like a very specific plan for that. My middle one is a lot more, I think academic is the word, science and maths, and she's like studying, she's very into it, and she loves learning, and she's got this crazy interest in Greek mythology at the moment, but she says she wants to be a zoologist. So she did want to be a zookeeper, and now she's decided she wants to be a zoo scientist. So and the 8-year-old, God, be a great dancer. She's majestic, and but I have no idea what she wants to do.
And how does, so let's say they do want to do, be a zoologist, something like that, you need to go to university. So how would the transition be from homeschooling to kind of entering and getting the results, right? I guess you need to go to university. How would that work?
I'm really glad you've asked that, because it's something I struggle to explain to people, because it's very difficult to explain it until you've seen it. And it's kind of a thing, because a lot of the time, home educators just have to have faith in other home educators. And I remember saying to a woman when my kids were tiny, did yours really just learn to read? And you really didn't do lessons with them, And she was like, no, I didn't. Like, I just, and they did it. And I feel like you do have to have trust that it will happen. And so I recently saw a whole bunch of teenagers who had never done formal institutional learning at all go off and do their GCSEs. And they'd done that. They had chosen to go to, it was a small group class, 1 hour a week per subject for a year. And then they went and did their GCSEs. They obviously did a bit of study at home. But these are children who had never been made to do lessons. But they wanted to go to college, and one of them wanted to do music. So they picked their subjects and they did them because they knew that they were motivated. I think it can look very different for different people. There are online schools that you can join to do GCSEs if you wanted to do that. I think that there might be, I really don't know, there might be more knowledge gaps for my children because we haven't followed the curriculum. But I also think they're learning so much other stuff that will be useful in terms of learning the exam content. And so for us, it will look like, okay, what do we need to do to prepare for this? We do the material, I might put in some other resources if we need it. And they take the exams. Yeah.
And then those exams. And how do you, as a parent who a home educator, how do you feel about exams?
I feel like it's a means to an end.
Okay.
I feel like it's a tool, and that rather than saying all children need to do 10 GCSEs, I don't know if you can hear my child screaming. She's singing, but it sounds like screaming. I hope it's not coming through. Rather than saying everyone needs to do these 10 GCSEs and that's what you do, and then, are you going to use them? And if so, what for? We say, right, well, what do you want to do? And then let's look at what we actually need to do to get there.
Get to that point, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, if they want to do, I've always said if they want to do them or they need to do them, we'll do them.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do it and you don't need to do it, I feel like it's not like there's a cut-off point where you can then never do them. Yeah. And so if you did want to go back and do a GCSE or retrain in something later on, you can. And I think increasingly the work environment is becoming like that. We do switch careers a lot now, and it doesn't scare me as someone that's done a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And I can see that the work environment is changing.
Completely, yeah.
So that's, yeah.
And how, obviously your eldest daughter is autistic.
Yeah.
How do you as a parent deal with that, you know, as well as home educating, also her autism? How does that look like?
I think for me, there's very little line between home education and parenting, because it is, that we've always done it. So for me, it's about creating an environment where she feels comfortable and safe. Yeah. And because that's where children learn best anyway. And so obviously her home environment is very important. It looks like I have found it more challenging than the other two, because
of course
she doesn't like demands. So if I suggest something, it's likely that that's going to be a no. So I've had to come up with ways of, talking with her and partnering with her and explaining with her why something might be worthwhile, even if it's not fun immediately. Yeah. And that's a challenge, yeah, for sure. But in general, it's about, I don't force her to go places she's not comfortable. We have to plan in a lot of downtime. If she's had a busy day of socialising the next day, often, she'll need to just decompress. And so just manage it, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And unfortunately, your relationship with your husband broke down, and you then became a single parent educating 3 children at home. Was that... Like, I mean, for people listening, they think, bloody hell, oh my God. Yeah. Like how did it change a lot taking a parent out of the environment? Did it feel like more pressure?
In a way it did. I think now we've obviously, a few years down the line, and we've got a arrangement that people are comfortable with, and it's regular. And so the girls go and see and they have a great time, and that feels great. It obviously did put pressure on me in terms of my work.
Yeah, of course.
And I was very lucky that it was around that time that I was starting on TikTok, and I just, became quite involved in that. And so the timing of it, is quite weird, because that I just have, I think actually it was just after we'd broken up, I started on TikTok and was just messing around with the girls and having fun. And then I realised that, oh, hang on, there's something here. No one's talking about home education. And so it's been a kind of shift onto that path.
Yeah.
But certainly I feel the pressure, the pressure of 3 children, pretty much being responsible for them, and working is a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. And let's talk about your TikTok, because it is amazing. For anyone that doesn't follow you, they need to follow you. Just a different perspective on what 99% of us have been taught, and we know. On your TikTok account, you talk about, which I love, being a single mom and then having a boyfriend, and that dynamic. Yeah. Just share with me a little bit about what you, because obviously it's a homeschooling, so you think, oh, why is that important? But it is, isn't it? It's so important.
Yeah, I think what do you mean, in terms of having a separate...
Yeah, because you have a separate relationship. Yeah. This guy, your new boyfriend, hasn't got children, has he, of his own? No. Yeah. So he's coming in, dating you with 3 children, you homeschool. You've really set boundaries, haven't you? Yeah. And, I think it's so powerful to listen to that. So if you could just share more a little bit about that.
I think, it's again, I did a video about this yesterday. Once you start home educating, you will start questioning absolutely everything. If you think that you have to do something in a certain way, generally I just don't find that's not true. And so for us, it was about, hang on, we want a relationship, but does that need to look like a cookie cutter, do they have a stepdad now? Well, actually, neither of us want that. Yeah. I don't think it would be best for the girls at this point. They've got a dad who lives down the road. They love him. There's no need for it. And as much as I think that can work amazingly for a lot of people, I didn't want a second family. I don't want more children. Yeah. Certainly not now. And it was about creating a relationship that said, frankly, sod the expectations and the traditional dynamics. What do we actually want to do? What does it look like for us? And for us, it looks kind of like a plait, I suppose. One strand is my life, one strand is his life, and they are very separate. And then we have the bit in the middle where we do cross over. And so that might look, we've been on holiday with the children together. He comes over and he'll stay over, but we don't live together. He doesn't have clothes in my house. It's not, I don't do his washing or cook for him.
Great.
So, and then I feel
I feel like so many women would go, oh my God, I'd love that. But they feel like, they can't be strong enough in themselves to actually say what they want, because the expectation is, well, he should move in and, you should be cooking his dinner and you should be doing these things. I know, I mean, I'm the same. But so how does someone say that? Was it a conversation that you had with him early on, or?
Yeah, I think it's been an ongoing thing. We were talking about it the other day, and we were saying that we think we do quite a good way of just feeling our way through it, because obviously things develop and things change, and we have regular conversations, because he'll say, I want, he works online, and he'll say, I want to go and do this week somewhere else and this week somewhere else, and I'll be like, cool, I'm busy girl, so go. I think it helps that he's very happy having that. He does not be waited on. And if I could give women one piece of advice, is that do not act like a maid for a guy,
No, or his mother.
Exactly. If you're acting like his mum, it's not going to be fun for you. And I've got 3 children to take care of. I don't need another one.
Yeah.
It's difficult, because thankfully he wants that as well. So I don't have to argue for it. But I would say, honestly, if you're looking at a bloke who wants to move in and have you act like a wife, well, then he needs to bring to the table enough, whatever that looks like for you, that is really worth it for you. And as always for me, it's about my children come first, and they're always going to, and he knows that. And they're happiest having this arrangement, basically. So
yeah, I love it. So empowering. And so let's talk about your TikTok, because you have exploded on there. And what was it that you thought, okay, I need to share this? Did it just kind of happen? Was it a reason?
Yeah, you know what it was? I'm really curious to go back to the old videos now and see. I do remember one video, which was the first time I had this flurry of followers. I think I'd, been ticking along, had probably 5,000. I did this one video, which was someone asked me why my children didn't go to school. And I just sat in a Tesco's car park, and I think I was sitting in my pajamas. and then I think I got to probably 30,000 from that, it went quite. And so I remember thinking, wow, there really is an interest in home education. And so started sharing more. And then people from the videos would see things I didn't even really, clock that I was including them, but because it's just part of my life. And they'd say, oh, you parent like that. Or, why didn't you respond like this when your child said this? And so I started sharing about gentle parenting as well. And then it just became more, it's a lifestyle thing as well now. So, so it's been a gradual, feeling my way through it and what people want to see. And it helps. I'm extremely passionate about both of those things.
Yeah. And you can tell that you are from your videos and also just from this chat. And on there, so you've now starting to, you're selling courses, is that right? Because obviously you must get millions of people asking for your advice. And how have you condensed that so that you can help more people?
So I've got, at the moment, I am working on a gentle parenting one, but I've got a home education one, which is called Reimagine. And I've called it a deschooling journey. So it's taking all of those beliefs that we had about child raising and education and school, and helping someone get the confidence to make an alternative choice if they want to. And, it includes things like how to deregister and how to find your kids' friends and how to take care of yourself as a parent and things like that. I did do one-on-ones, but I've had so much work on recently that I've just started to restructure things. And I think that, increasingly it'll be courses and maybe video courses or group workshops. But at the moment, again, as a single parent, this whole thing is like I'm working, but I do actually need to home educate as well. I still need, I just work all the time. So I'm looking at a few different options, but the course is out already.
Yeah, love that. And what is the next for you? What's like the vision for your future? Yeah. With, your TikTok platform, you're growing. What do you see for yourself and your family?
Well, as we were just chatting about, I think a podcast is very likely in the near future. I'm actually really excited about now that I've got my head around it. And that combined with a YouTube channel. And really, although TikTok has the 10-minute feature now, which is fantastic, and I love being on there. I love that you can be messy and real on there, and it's not filtered. And I love the lives where we can chat. But I think answering some of the deeper questions in longer form content would be really helpful. Sorry, I think that was my battery going low. I think so. YouTube, a podcast, and just growing my TikTok because I love it on there. So I will definitely be on there for as long as they let me. Yeah,
and I just can see you on on This Morning sharing what you're doing. I tell as an expert, you are an expert in your field, and
very kind.
I feel like so many people want to know what you have to share. And I'm seeing the way that the world is looking now. I'm sure you know some facts about it, but I don't know facts. But I feel just from listening and hearing, so many people are now choosing to homeschool their children.
Yeah. I think there's a big movement. I mean, obviously, lockdown was a huge wake-up call for a lot of families. And I remember thinking there are a lot of families who find their children are happier during a global pandemic than at school. What does that say about their experience of school? And that's not to say that some schools aren't doing a great job, and the teachers I think are all trying their absolute best.
Of course.
The resourcing and the training and things, it's just so terrible from the top down. And I think that was a big wake-up call. And then also now that there is more awareness about disabilities and neurodiversity, people are realizing that the school system is designed for mainstream. It's not designed
and one type of child. So if your child is not that type of child, ultimately they're going to suffer in some way.
And it's really sad, and it shouldn't be like that. And I understand there's these protests going on about the SEN reform, and people are fighting so hard to get their child the right resourcing in schools, but every time I see those videos my heart sinks a little bit, because I think people almost see, the parents see themselves on one side and the teachers on the other, and it's not like that. Teachers really want the best for the child. They're just seeing a completely different side to the child, and they don't have the resources. And so I think offering an alternative and trying to help people access that if they can, it is another way we can help those parents, basically.
Yeah, amazing. Hannah, I've got one final question for you, and this is the question I ask every single person who is on my podcast, and that is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I would say, oh my goodness, I didn't know you were going to ask me that, so it's all going to be fine. I would tell myself, as long as I could believe it as a younger person, I would say you need to have confidence everything is going to work out really well, and listen to that inner voice. And I know that is consumed by other voices saying you're not good enough and you're not reaching potential, but listen to the tiny one that's saying no, you are doing well, and you are doing well enough, and that you are going to do some really good things.
Absolutely. Amen to that, Hannah. Thank you so much for this enlightening, amazing conversation on a totally personal, selfish note. Even if not one person listened to this podcast, I just feel like I've just had an amazing conversation. I feel educated. I feel like I've opened up a new section of life that I have always been curious about, but I didn't know. So thank you, Hannah. And I'm really excited to see where this journey goes for you. And, congratulations on being an incredible home educator.
Thank you. Thanks, Nicola. That was very
Thank you.